At 9:17 on Sunday night, Maribel Shaw held up a clear plastic container before 12 dinner guests. "Would you like to explain why this was hidden in your bag?" Black maid Dalia Reed stood beside the service door, still wearing the white apron she had tied at 6 that morning. Inside were roasted chicken, 2 rolls, vegetables, and untouched cake from the Billionaire's charity banquet. "I was taking it home." Maribel smiled. "So you admit stealing?" Before Dalia's reason for taking that food changes everything, subscribe and tell us where you are watching from. Billionaire Grant Holloway entered from the adjoining study. "What is happening?" "Your maid has been stealing from us," Maribel said. "Apparently even our leftovers are too tempting." Dalia met Grant's eyes. The kitchen manager said untouched food would be thrown away. Grant looked at the tray carts. Enough remained to feed 50 people. Was it going to be discarded? The manager hesitated. "Usually, yes." "Then it wasn't stolen." Maribel's expression tightened. "It belonged to this household until I decided otherwise." Dalia lowered her eyes only to control her anger. "Look at me when I speak to you," Maribel ordered. Dalia did. "I worked 14 hours today and packed food already marked for disposal. You hid it inside your bag. Because last week you poured bleach over the food I saved." The room went silent. Grant looked at Maribel. "You did what?" She was encouraging staff to take property. "I was taking sandwiches to a woman sleeping behind the bus station," Dalia said. Maribel laughed softly. "And now she feeds an entire neighborhood." Dalia reached for the container. "I'll leave." "You'll leave after security searches your room." Grant stepped between them. "No search without cause." Maribel held up Dalia's staff card. "She entered the rear pantry after midnight 3 times this week." Dalia looked at the card. "You went through my locker." "I manage this house." Grant noticed a hospital stamp on Dalia's hand. "You came here from a hospital." "My shift started at 6. "That wasn't my question." Her jaw tightened. "My father is at St. Agnes." For 11 months, Dalia had balanced double shifts, hospital visits, and rent notices without asking for help. Leon's lungs had been damaged during his years at the factory, but he still apologized whenever she bought his medicine. That morning, he had squeezed her hand and whispered, "Do not lose your job for me." She had promised she would return before midnight with something he could eat. The untouched banquet food was not luxury to her. It was one warm meal, one night without choosing between groceries and the electricity bill, and one small promise she could still keep. "And that gives you permission to steal dinner?" Maribel asked. "He hasn't eaten properly in 3 days." Grant's expression changed. "Why?" "His insurance stopped covering the nutritional supplement his doctor prescribed." Dalia removed a hospital notice from her bag. "Denied, nutritional support, employment coverage inactive." Grant read it. "You work full-time. Why is your coverage inactive?" Dalia looked at Maribel. "I was told payroll was fixing it." Maribel's voice cooled. "Benefits cannot be processed while an employee violates policy. I never received a violation notice." Maribel tore the hospital letter in half. "This dinner is not about her private problems." Dalia stared at the pieces, untied her apron, and said, "I quit." Maribel smiled. "If she walks out, she forfeits this month's wages." Dalia turned slowly. "You withheld my pay." "Pending review." "My rent is due tomorrow." "Then perhaps you should have thought about that before stealing." Grant's voice dropped. "Release her wages tonight." "You're embarrassing me." "No. I'm learning how you treat people when you think I'm not watching." One elderly guest studied the hospital stamp. "St. Agnes, room 614? Dalia stopped. "Yes." "Who is your father?" "Leon Reed." The container slipped from Maribel's hand. Food scattered across the carpet. Grant saw her reaction. "You know that name." "I don't." The guest stood. Leon Reed worked for Holloway Foods 22 years ago. He reported contaminated shipments before the company's largest recall. Grant frowned. "My father said that whistleblower disappeared." "He didn't disappear," Dalia said. He was blacklisted. The doctor pointed at Maribel. Her father signed the settlement meant to silence him. Dalia stared. My father never mentioned a settlement. Because he never received it. How much? Grant asked. $2 million. Dalia's face went still. My father has been choosing between medicine and food. Maribel reached for her phone, but Grant took it first. A notification appeared. St. Agnes Administration. Patient Leon Reed transferred per your request. Dalia grabbed Maribel's wrist. Transferred where? Maribel said nothing. Grant ordered security to bring the car. Dalia left through the service exit with the food. Grant followed several minutes later without announcing it. At 10:06, he watched from across the street as Dalia entered a crumbling apartment building. She did not carry the food upstairs. She placed it on a folding table in the lobby, where 6 elderly former factory workers waited with empty plates. A young nurse rushed through the entrance. Dalia, your father is gone. She handed Dalia a note found beneath Leon's pillow. Dalia unfolded it with shaking hands. Grant saw one sentence before it dropped. The woman who stopped your insurance knows what happened to the other workers. Behind Dalia, the elevator opened. Maribel stepped out. Maribel stepped out of the elevator holding Dalia's staff file beneath one arm. The 6 retired factory workers in the lobby went silent. Dalia moved between her and the folding table. Where is my father? Maribel glanced at Grant, who had entered behind her. Leon Reed was transferred for psychiatric evaluation. He has lung disease. He is not psychiatric. He became agitated and accused people of trying to kill him. Who signed the transfer? Maribel showed her one page. The signature at the bottom looked like Dalia's. I never signed that. Grant examined it. The date says yesterday. Dalia worked at the estate all day. Then someone used her electronic authorization, Maribel said. Dalia understood. My employee card. You took it from my locker. One retired worker stood. Albert Gaines wore oxygen tubes beneath his nose. Leon warned us this would happen. Grant turned to him. What did he warn you about? Anyone who asked about the old settlement was moved, fired, or declared confused. The nurse locked the entrance. No one leaves until Dalia's father is found. Maribel laughed. You cannot imprison me in a building funded by Holloway charity. Dalia looked around at cracked walls and buckets catching rainwater. This is funded by your charity. The foundation provides housing support. Albert produced an envelope. Holloway Foundation reports paying $4,000 per resident every month. There are 12 residents here, Dalia said. $48,000, Grant replied. Where does it go? Maribel's smile disappeared. The nurse pointed toward the basement. The manager keeps records downstairs. Maribel blocked the door. Those files are private. Grant held out his hand. Move. Dalia noticed grey dust along Maribel's heel, the same dust covering the basement steps. You were down there before coming upstairs. Maribel looked at her shoes. You arrived through the elevator, Dalia continued. But it has been broken for 6 months. The nurse nodded. It only runs with a maintenance key. Maribel reached into her bag. Dalia caught her wrist. A key fell beside a bottle of clear liquid. The nurse picked it up. Fast-acting sedative. It belongs to the hospital, Maribel said. Then why is it in your handbag? 2 men entered wearing St. Agnes transport uniforms. Dalia recognized one. That man told me my father had already left. They moved toward her. Grant stepped between them. Show identification. Neither did. Albert struck the fire alarm. Residents opened their doors, filling the upper railings. The men stopped. Maribel lowered her voice. You are making this worse for your father. Dalia stepped closer. Tell me where he is. He is alive. That was not my question. Maribel looked at Grant. If she continues, your family's name will be dragged through every newspaper. Then it should survive the truth. The basement door opened from the other side. Leon Reed emerged wearing a hospital gown beneath an old factory coat. Dalia ran to him. "Dad." He held her tightly, though every breath shook. "A laundry driver helped me escape." Maribel backed toward the transport men. Leon pointed at her. "She came to my room before dawn." "That is false. She offered me money to say the contaminated shipments never existed." Grant looked at Leon. "My father's company paid a settlement. Her father redirected it." Leon pulled a ledger page from his coat. 23 workers were listed beside settlement amounts. Every payment had gone to an account controlled by Maribel's father, Stephen Vale. Beside each worker's name appeared a diagnosis. Albert, dementia. Mrs. Carter, delusional disorder. Leon Reed, cognitive decline. "They made every whistleblower look unreliable," Dalia said. Leon nodded. "When we got sick, they called it age. When we remembered, they called it confusion." Grant read the page. "My father knew. Your father signed the first recall. Then he died before the second report became public." Grant had been told his father died of a heart attack. Second report? Leon reached into his coat. His pocket was empty. The red envelope. Maribel smiled and pulled it from Dalia's file. Leon lunged, but a transport man grabbed him. Dalia struck the man's arm with the food container. Grant tackled the second. The envelope slid across the lobby. Maribel reached it first and tore it open. Inside was not a report. It was a photograph of Dalia's mother, Dalia Reed, standing beside Grant's father at a factory gate. Dalia froze. "My mother died when I was 9. Leon shook his head. "That picture was taken 3 years after her funeral." Grant turned it over. Celia had written, "The food was never theft. Follow the meals to the woman who survived." Maribel's face drained of color. Leon looked at Dalia. "The leftovers you brought here were being counted." "By whom?" "Your mother." The basement lights switched on. A woman's voice came through an old intercom. "Dalia, do not let Maribel burn the kitchen records." Dalia gripped the railing. "Mom." The voice continued. "The contaminated food never left the factory. It was served for 22 years through shelters, hospitals, and worker housing." Grant looked at the meals on the folding table, then at the Holloway charity labels on every container. Maribel pulled a lighter and ran toward the basement. Dalia followed. Below, shelves held donation invoices, sealed food samples, and photographs of sick workers. Behind a glass partition stood Dalia Reed, alive. Before Dalia could reach her, Maribel struck the emergency lock. Steel doors dropped between them. Celia pressed one hand to the glass. "Your father did not bring you here for food," she said. "He brought you because you are the only person who can prove the Billionaire's charity has been poisoning the people it claims to feed." Dalia looked down at the container she had carried from the banquet. A printed batch number matched one written across the oldest photograph. Grant saw it too. "This food came from my foundation tonight." Celia nodded through the glass. "And if anyone upstairs eats another bite, the next victims will be all your guests." Grant stared at the batch number stamped beneath the banquet container. HFC 17-442. The same code appeared on a faded photograph of canned soup stacked outside Holloway Foods 22 years earlier. Dalia turned toward the basement stairs. "Albert. Stop everyone from eating." Grant grabbed the intercom. "Do not touch any food from tonight's banquet. Seal every container and call emergency services." Maribel reached the storage shelves and flicked her lighter. Dalia seized her wrist before the flame touched the invoices. "You knew the food was contaminated. I knew the batch numbers were old. You served it anyway. The products passed inspection." Celia struck the glass partition. "They passed because Stephen Vale paid the laboratory to replace the samples." Leon entered, breathing hard. 23 workers lost their health because your family protected those shipments." The 2 false transport workers rushed down behind him. One grabbed Grant while the other reached for the ledger. Dalia slammed a metal sampling tray against the man's forearm. The ledger dropped. Leon kicked it beneath a cabinet. Grant pinned the second man against the wall. Upstairs, residents began shouting for police. Maribel struck the emergency switch beside the glass room. A warning light flashed above Celia. Cold storage purge, 4 minutes. Frost spread across the partition. Dalia ran to the controls. What is that room? A preserved evidence chamber, Celia said. Below freezing, the chemical markers disappear. And you? The door locks from outside. Grant searched for the release key. Maribel held it between 2 fingers. Let me leave with the ledger, and I open the chamber. Dalia looked at her mother through the glass. Celia's hands were already trembling. Grant moved forward. Maribel held the key over a drain. One more step. Dalia studied the inspection sticker. Reed Mechanical Services. Her father's old company. Dad, you installed this chamber. Leon nodded. Then there must be a manual release. Inside the original food scale upstairs. 4 minutes was not enough. Leon pointed to a rusted pulley. The scale and this door shared a counterweight. Overload it, and the lock should lift. Grant stacked sealed crates onto the platform. Dalia and Leon added sample boxes. The cable tightened, but the door did not move. Celia's lips were turning blue. Maribel smiled. You cannot repair 22 years in 3 minutes. Dalia noticed every container listed an incorrect weight. They underreported the weight to hide how much food was distributed. Grant understood. The counterweight is calibrated to false numbers. Dalia opened a crate and transferred cans onto the platform until the cable groaned. The glass door rose 2 inches. Leon pushed his factory coat through the gap. Celia crawled toward it. Maribel threw the key into the drain. Dalia lifted the door while Grant pulled Celia through. They rolled away as freezing vapor filled the basement. Celia clung to Dalia. For one moment, Dalia forgot the sirens and evidence. She held the mother she had buried in her mind 25 years earlier. Then she pulled back. You were alive while Dad raised me alone. I entered witness protection after the first investigation collapsed. You could not call once. Stephen Vale controlled officers inside the program. Contact risked leading him to you. Leon looked away. Dalia understood. You knew. He nodded. I received 1 letter each year. You both chose the lie for me. Police entered and arrested the transport men. Maribel approached them, already presenting herself as a witness. Grant stopped the officers. She ordered Leon's transfer, carried a sedative, tried to burn evidence, and locked Celia inside that chamber. Maribel turned on him. Your foundation distributed the food. My name on the building makes me responsible for opening every record. Celia removed a sealed sample from her coat. This proves contamination continued after the original recall. Grant read the production date. 6 months ago. Someone restarted the old processing line. Maribel laughed. You still think my father controls Holloway Foods? Who does? Your chief financial officer, Peter Lorne. Grant's closest advisor had managed the foundation since Grant inherited it. Celia handed Dalia a flash drive. The other women who packed the night meals recorded every truck. The videos showed current charity shipments entering a sealed factory after midnight. Peter Lorne appeared in 3 recordings. In the 4th, Grant entered the building. Dalia stared at him. You were there. That night I was in Boston. Maribel smiled. The camera does not lie. Dalia replayed it. The man had Grant's face and walk, but signed with his left hand. Grant was right hand. It is staged, Dalia said. Celia nodded. They altered the face. Grant's phone regained signal. 23 missed calls appeared. 1 message came from Peter. The foundation board has seen the video. You are removed effective immediately. Another followed. Police are searching your home for Denise Avery's missing settlement money. Maribel watched him. You followed the Maid home and walked into the trap. Dalia looked at the ceiling camera. This building was never the destination. No, Celia said. They wanted Grant photographed beside contaminated food and stolen records. Leon recovered the ledger from beneath the cabinet. A loose page fell out. It was a staff schedule from a Holloway Foundation dinner 20 years earlier. Dalia recognized one name beside the kitchen entrance. Marion Holloway. Grant's mother. He stared at the date. She died that night. The official report said she suffered an allergic reaction. Celia pointed to a note beside her name. Refused the meal. Saw the switch. Grant looked at the containers. What switch? The labels, Celia said. Safe food went to donors. Contaminated food went to workers and shelters. Dalia thought of the elderly residents upstairs eating what wealthy guests rejected. Her father had not been blacklisted only for reporting spoiled shipments. He had uncovered a system deciding whose health mattered. A police officer returned. Mr. Holloway, we received an arrest order for you. Grant did not resist. On what charge? The murder of Denise Avery. Dalia stepped forward. That is impossible. The officer showed them a photograph recovered from Grant's home. It showed Grant standing over Denise inside St. Agnes Hospital on the night she died. Dalia examined the image. This time, the man was signing with his right hand. On Denise's wrist was Dalia's missing employee bracelet. Celia whispered, "That photograph is real." Grant looked at her. "How can it be real if I never met Denise?" Celia pointed to the scar beneath the man's ear. "He is not an actor." Grant went still. "My brother died at birth." "No," Celia said. "Peter Lorne raised him." Then every sealed container upstairs began sounding the same hidden alarm. Dalia tore beneath one label. A tag blinked beside a chemical capsule. Celia's face changed. "Those are heat triggers." Grant looked toward the residents upstairs. "What happens when they activate?" "The capsule destroys the sample. In a sealed room, its fumes can stop breathing." The intercom came alive. Peter Lorne's voice filled the basement. "Bring the ledger to the factory before midnight, and I will deactivate the meals." A timer appeared on every tag. 12 minutes. Then Peter added, "Bring Dalia. Your brother wants to meet the woman he framed, and explain why her mother had to die." 12 minutes remained. Dalia grabbed the intercom. "Peter, deactivate the capsules. Bring the ledger. You need the ledger because it proves the settlements were stolen. I need it because people believe paper more than sick workers." Grant looked at the police officer. "Help us evacuate the building." The officer hesitated, then saw the blinking tags beneath the food labels. "Everyone upstairs now." Residents were moved toward the street while Leon and Celia collected sealed samples. Dalia noticed the timers were not synchronized. The containers closest to the radiators counted down faster. "They're heat sensitive," she said. "Put them somewhere cold." The old freight elevator opened onto an underground loading bay. Workers carried every container inside while Grant used the maintenance controls to lower the temperature. The timers slowed. 6 minutes, Celia said. "We bought time, not safety." Peter called again. "Factory. Midnight. Dalia and the ledger." Grant faced the officer. "Arrest me later. Right now, follow us." The abandoned Holloway factory stood beside the river, its windows covered with metal sheets. Police remained 2 streets away while Dalia, Grant, Leon, and Celia entered through the loading dock. Maribel was already there. She stood beside Peter Lorne, no longer pretending fear. "You led them exactly where we needed," Peter told her. Grant stared at her. "You knew about my brother." "I knew Peter raised him. I did not know which one of you was real." A man stepped from behind the conveyor line. He had Grant's face, but his expression carried none of Grant's restraint. "My name is Graham Holloway," he said. "I was born 7 minutes before him." Grant went still. Peter explained that Grant's father had hidden the older twin after learning the family trust transferred voting control to the firstborn son at 35. Peter raised Graham in secret, promising him the company stolen at birth. Graham looked at Grant. "You inherited my name, my home, and my mother. Our mother thought you died." She learned the truth the night she refused that meal. Celia opened the ledger. Marion Holloway saw Peter switch labels so contaminated food went to workers. When she confronted him, Graham blocked the exit. Grant's voice dropped. "You killed her." "I tried to stop her calling security." Peter put the allergen in her drink. Peter pulled a remote from his coat. Enough history. The ledger. Dalia held it up. "First deactivate the capsules." Peter pressed one button. Across Celia's tablet, every timer stopped. Then Graham seized Leon and held a knife beneath his chin. "Now give it to me." Dalia looked at the old conveyor controls. One green light blinked beside a label printer. The same model had stamped the false batch numbers. "You don't need the ledger destroyed," she said. "You need my fingerprints on it." Peter smiled. The maid who stole food, forged records, and blackmailed the Holloways. A clean ending. Dalia placed the ledger on the conveyor. Peter released Leon to grab it. Dalia struck the emergency start switch. The belt jerked forward, carrying the ledger beneath the industrial scanner. Every page appeared on the factory's overhead screens. Celia connected her tablet to the dormant network. The files uploaded to police, regulators, journalists, and the workers waiting outside. Peter reached for the power cable. Grant tackled him. Graham lunged at Dalia, but Leon hooked his cane behind Graham's knee. He fell against the label machine. Maribel picked up Peter's remote. Dalia braced for another attack. Instead, Maribel pressed the factory doors open. Police flooded inside. "You helped poison people," Dalia said. Maribel lowered the remote. "I know. Opening one door does not erase that." She surrendered. Peter and Graham were arrested for murder, attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, witness intimidation, and poisoning vulnerable communities. Maribel faced charges for coercion, evidence destruction, kidnapping, and helping conceal the scheme. Her testimony reduced her sentence, but not her responsibility. The recovered records proved Leon had reported the contamination truthfully. Every accusation against him was withdrawn, and the stolen $2 million settlement was returned with compensation. Celia's false death certificate was voided. Her testimony identified workers deliberately denied treatment, and their families received public apologies, restored benefits, and independent compensation. Grant dissolved the Holloway Foundation Board and surrendered family control of the food company. Workers, residents, medical advocates, and affected families formed an independent cooperative. Dalia refused a ceremonial title. She accepted a paid role directing food safety complaints and emergency support for workers afraid to report abuse. Celia returned slowly to her family. Dalia did not forgive 25 years of silence in one embrace. They began with breakfast, records, and honest answers. Months later, Grant visited the apartment building carrying sealed meals from a local cooperative kitchen. Dalia checked every label. "You expect special treatment. Not after following you home without permission. One coffee," she said. No gratitude disguised as romance. Agreed. Inside, Leon served dinner beside workers once accused of being confused, dishonest, or disposable. Maribel had called Dalia a thief for carrying leftovers home. In truth, Dalia had been carrying proof of who was fed, who was poisoned, and whose hunger powerful people believed nobody would notice. She entered the mansion worried about one meal. She ended a system that had profited from thousands. And she made certain that no struggling family in Holloway housing would ever again have to choose between reporting danger, buying medicine, paying rent, or putting dinner on the table again.